In The Silent Bond, Jack Harrison, a former Special Forces operative, stumbles upon Shadow, a military-trained dog abandoned in the snowy woods. Shadow leads Jack to uncover the whereabouts of his former comrade, Ethan Cole, who is on the run after discovering damning evidence of betrayal during their last mission. As Jack and Ethan reunite, they face relentless mercenaries determined to retrieve the notebook, holding Ethan's findings through perilous battles and heartfelt moments. The story explores loyalty, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between man and dog. What do you think about The Silent Bond? Does Jack's journey resonate with you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel DG Story to enjoy more thrilling and emotional tales. Like this one, your feedback inspires us to create even better stories. The winter morning was bitterly cold with a heavy frost blanketing the trees in a shimmering white coat. Jack Harrison pulled his scarf tighter around his neck as he trudged through the dense forest in northern Montana. The snow crunched under his boots, each step a reminder of the isolation he sought. Jack, a former Special Forces operative, had retreated to this remote corner of the country to escape the memories of war that still haunted him. Hunting had become his therapy, a quiet, solitary activity that required focus and patience, leaving little room for his past demons to resurface that morning. However, something felt different as Jack followed fresh deer tracks weaving through the trees. A faint noise cut through the silence. He stopped abruptly, holding his breath to listen. First, it was faint, almost imperceptible. Owl, low guttural whimper carried on the cold wind. "What the hell?" Jack muttered under his breath, his sharp instincts kicking in. The sound came again, more distinct this time, and he turned off the trail toward it, pushing through a thicket of bare branches. Jack's breath caught in his throat. Tied to the base of a massive oak tree was a dog. The animal was a Belgian Malinois, this tan coat matted with dirt and patches of dried blood. Its ribs were visible, and its eyes held a mixture of weariness and exhaustion. A frayed rope bound its neck to the tree trunk, and the bark around it was scratched and scarred as though the dog had tried desperately to free itself. Jack knelt slowly, his movements deliberate to avoid startling the animal. "Hey there, buddy," he said softly, his voice steady and calm. "What's a guy like you doing out here?" The dog let out a low growl but didn't move, his body rigid with fear, as Jack back observed it. Something metallic around the dog's neck caught his eye. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a knife, and cut the rope carefully. "Easy, now I'm not going to hurt you," he whispered as the tension in the rope released. The dog stayed in place but tilted its head slightly. Watching him with intelligent eyes, Jack took a closer look at the object dangling from its collar, a military dog tag. His heart stopped for a moment as he read the engraved name, Ethan Cole. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Ethan Cole wasn't just anyone. He had been Jack's squad mate during his last deployment, a man he trusted with his life memories flooded Jack's mind missions in hostile territories. Long nights spent strategizing, and Ethan's easy laughter cutting through the tension. But their last mission together had gone horribly wrong, leaving both physical and emotional scars that neither man had spoken of since Jack stared at the dog tag. His hands trembling slightly, he had heard rumors about Ethan after they returned to stateside, how he had withdrawn from everyone, disappearing into the wilderness. But Jack had never expected to stumble across a piece of Ethan's world out here in the middle of nowhere. "Shadow," Jack murmured, trying the name out as he met the dog's gaze. The dog's ears perked up slightly, his tail giving a hesitant wag. "So you're his partner?" "Huh." Jack pulled out a water bottle from his pack and poured some into his CED hand, offering it to the dog. Shadow hesitated, but eventually leaned forward to drink. "That's it, buddy. You're safe now," Jack said, his voice soft but firm to Shadow. Jack's mind raced. Why was the dog here tied up and abandoned? And more importantly, where was Ethan? The snow around the tree bore signs of recent activity, boot prints and scattered cigarette butts. Someone had been here, but they were long gone now. Jack scanned the area, noting the disturbed snow leading deeper into the forest. He looked back at Shadow, who was now watching him intently. "I guess you and I have some work to do," he said, standing and slinging his rifle over his shoulder. Shadow stood shakily, his legs trembling from weakness. but still holding steady. Jack adjusted his pack and started following the tracks. The dog limping beside him, the forest seemed eerily quiet now. The faint rustle of wind in the trees, the only sound Jackson. Thoughts turned inward as he pieced together what little he knew. Ethan had always been the rock of their team, the one who kept everyone grounded no matter how dire the situation. What could have driven him to leave behind a dog like Shadow? Jack glanced down at the dog, whose focus never wavered as they walked. "Don't worry, Shadow," he muttered. "We gonna find him whatever it takes." As they moved deeper into the woods, the snow began to fall again. Light flakes swirling in the air like a silent promise of challenges ahead. The cabin stood in the middle of a snowy clearing, its wooden frame leaning slightly under the weight of age and neglect. Jack approached cautiously, his breath visible in the icy air. Shadow followed at his side, his steps steady but wary. The tracks they had been following led directly to the cabin, the cigarette butts and faint boot prints near the oak tree. Now made sense. Someone had been here, and recently. As Jack studied the area, a strange unease settled in his chest. He stepped onto the rickety porch, noting the broken slats beneath his boots. The door was slightly ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. Jack glanced at Shadow, who stood still, ears perked and nose twitching. "Stay close," Jack muttered as he nudged the door open with his foot. The inside of the cabin was as desolate as the outside. A single chair sat in the middle of the room, its paint peeling and legs unsteady. A small table was cluttered with empty cans, crumpled papers, and a nearly burnt-out candle. The smell of damp wood and stale tobacco lingered in the air. Jack's eyes landed on a stack of papers on the table. He reached for them, cautiously flipping through scribbled notes and crude sketches. One paper caught his attention. It was a hand-drawn map of the surrounding forest. Several locations were marked with X's, including the spot where he had found Shadow. "What is this?" Jack murmured, tracing the lines on the map. Shadow let out a low whine, drawing Jack's attention to the corner of the room. There, nestled against the wall, was a makeshift bed, a worn sleeping bag with patches of dirt and snow, a half-empty pack of cigarettes, and a water bottle set nearby. Jack crouched down and examined the items. The brand of cigarettes matched the butts he had found earlier. He picked up the water bottle, shaking it slightly. It was still half full, the liquid inside unfrozen. Whoever had been here couldn't have left more than a day ago. Ethan. Jack whispered the name heavy on his tongue. Shadow padded over to the sleeping bag, sniffing it cautiously. Before looking back at Jack, with expectant eyes, Jack felt a knot tighten in his chest. Ethan had been here, but the chaotic state of the cabin and the notes scattered around told a story of a man who was struggling. Jack glanced at a nearby shelf lined with a few battered books and a photograph in a cracked frame. The photo stopped him cold. It was a picture of their unit, taken during their last deployment. Ethan stood in the middle, his arm slung around Jack's shoulder, both of them smiling despite the harsh desert backdrop. Jack's fingers tightened around the frame as the memories surged back, memories of missions gone wrong, lives lost, and the haunting weight of survival. Shadow barked suddenly, his ears swiveling toward the window. Jack tensed instinctively, reaching for the pistol holstered at his side. "Easy, boy," he whispered, moving toward the window. The forest outside was still the trees, swaying gently in the wind. But Jack's sharp eyes caught something, a faint trail of smoke curling upward in the distance, barely visible against the gray sky. "Looks like we're not alone," Jack muttered, turning back to Shadow. He grabbed the map from the table, folding it neatly and tucking it into his jacket before leaving. He scanned the cabin one last time. Taking in every detail, he noted the way the sleeping bag was positioned, the alignment of the scattered items, and the faint scratches on the floorboards. It all pointed to one conclusion. Ethan was on the move, but he wasn't running aimlessly. Shadow followed Jack as he stepped back into the cold, their breaths mingling in the icy air. Jack's mind raced as he pieced together the clues. Ethan was clearly trapped, tracking something or someone. But why, and why leave Shadow behind? Jack glanced down at the dog who walked beside him with quiet determination. "I don't know what kind of trouble Ethan's gotten himself into," he said, more to himself than to Shadow, "but we're going to figure it out." The smoke in the distance grew more distinct as they trudged through the forest. Jack felt his adrenaline Spike his senses sharpening as they neared what looked like another camp. The remains of a fire smoldered in a ring of stones, and scattered around it were the unmistakable signs of a recent presence: footprints, a discarded canteen, and a torn piece of fabric. Shadow sniffed at the fabric, letting out a low,